Hello, everybody. Welcome to A Deeper Take, where each week I dissect the structure and content of an essay from a writer's point of view. This is a strategy that I use in my undergraduate classrooms and one that I'm now taking to YouTube. In the undergraduate classroom, the student chooses the piece, and then we all learn to respond in 250-word observational essays. And these essays become the core of their educational practice. And this is also one of the core practices of Think Deeply's, Write Clearly's Credible Conversations and Content course. And the link for that course is below. So if you'd like to learn more about that and use writing to improve your critical thinking and observation muscles in conversation with other thoughtful individuals like yourself, that link is below. This week's essay is Arthur Laffer and Stephen Moore's The Hotel California Wealth Tax, which was printed in the Wall Street Journal on March 5th, 2023. And it isn't entirely clear, despite the title, what the purpose or focus of Laffer and Moore's essay is, because it seems to be dual focused. One is introduced in the first paragraph, and that's that the proposed wealth tax by 7 blue states is something that they don't support. But there's no real discussion of the wealth tax or its perceived benefits or its drawbacks in the approximately 500-word essay. The other driving purpose of the essay seems to be that the blue states have tax rates that are too high, according to them, and that is driving residents away from these states to places like Florida, Tennessee, Texas, states with lower taxes and budget surpluses, according to them. And so the first question in response to this essay then becomes, look, if the authors don't know the focus of their own essay, how can they expect their readers to get anything meaningful out of it? The first potential focus, that they don't support the wealth tax, gets 2 paragraphs in the essay, but not about the merits or drawbacks of the tax, but paragraphs that focus on whether California's wealth tax would be required even if a resident leaves California. So editorial note here, I read Alex Lee, he's the assemblyman who's proposing this tax, press release in advance of making this video. And I could not independently verify that California state tax would travel with a resident if they left California. I'm not saying it is, I'm not saying it isn't, I'm saying I couldn't independently verify that. But I do on the surface agree with the authors that it would seem unconstitutional or of dubious logic if it did. And also editorial note here, I also suspect that a wealth tax, and I don't know what's being proposed here, but to tax someone on stock gains without selling stock, so to tax someone on their net worth but not their income, would be very destabilizing for the stock market. And so I wouldn't on the surface necessarily personally agree that a wealth tax would be in the public interest, not on the surface of things. I'd have to do more reading about it. So I'm not opposed to Laffer's, just speaking personally, I'm not opposed to Laffer and Moore's argument. But that doesn't mean I think this is good writing. Because instead of diving into exactly those questions, whether or not a wealth tax is in the public interest, or detailing exactly what's being proposed, that would require the exact quotes from the law or the proposal or someone, that's the concrete information that the reader needs. Laffer and Moore don't give us that and actually switch to the other focus of the essay, that blue states are losing residents. And that seems to drive their conclusion paragraph, that blue states should, instead of, quote, conjuring up new ways to soak the rich, wouldn't it be wiser for higher tax states to start imitating the winners? From the evidence in this essay, the answer to their question is no. It isn't actually obvious that it would be wiser for higher tax states to imitate lower tax states from the evidence in this essay, of which there are scant thoughtful assessments or concrete pieces of information. And this is the primary problem with writing with 2 focuses. There isn't enough time in 500 words to do either focus justice. So questions regarding focus 1, the wealth tax, that remain unquestioned, unanswered, and unasked. How many people who left the blue states would be affected by the wealth tax? And did they leave in anticipation of a wealth tax? Or is there enough evidence that people would leave in anticipation of a wealth tax? And absolutely no evidence goes to that level of the problem. Only the undergraduate summary that they provide, that people are leaving, and so they're going to lower tax states, which is a pretty weak argument on its surface. No percentages of people who left a blue state going to a lower tax state are lifted. Are all blue state relocators moving to lower tax states, or just some of them? Are some of them moving to blue states, Minnesota, etc.? There's no evidence here to support the claims being made. And Laffer and Moore use essentially two data points to arrive at a conclusion. And the question becomes, do reasonable people, does the standard Wall Street Journal reader make decisions on only two data points? Most intelligent people, I think, would not. Therefore, correlation is not causation. It isn't necessarily clear, although it might be true, that the assessed causation, taxes, is related to the outcome here. There is something in Laffer, this is something Laffer and Moore actually admit in the final paragraph, stating that weather, crime, etc. also play a role. Okay, reasonable people ask, how much of a factor? This is evidence that Laffer and Moore didn't uncover or write about, if they did uncover, which is a similar sin of communication. Laffer and Moore have then asked for 500 words of our time in order for us to gain clarity on one or two things: the usefulness of a wealth tax, which is undiscussed in detail, or the usefulness or validity of lower blue state taxes, which are also undiscussed in detail. So they've asked for 500 words of our time and returned exactly zero information to us by which we can make a decision. This is, to me, the definition of unsuccessful writing. If the purpose of a published document is to inform the reader and to help readers make decisions, it isn't entirely clear that Laffer and Moore are wrong. It's just clear that they didn't write it well enough to prove that they're right. For instance, one of the reasons that state taxes are high include education, and by inference to education, the ability of residents to climb the social mobility ladder by choosing to live in your state. So of interest, Florida, one of the low tax states mentioned, is 41st in the country at funding per student, according to teachingcertificate.com, and they seem to be quoting from the government's website. Florida spends $10,098 per student. Compare that to New Jersey's $18,874 per student, which is the third highest spending per student in the nation. Yet, according to worldpopulationreview.com, New Jersey ranks first in the nation in overall education, which is combined K-12 and university, and Florida ranks third. So there's an argument, and more detail would be necessary. They would need to go into this to propose that Florida is more efficient with their investment dollars than some of their higher tax blue state colleagues. But this was not detailed, although of note, I found it in about 3 Google searches. Assumed, but undiscussed in this essay, is a question: what are taxes for? And are certain states more or less efficient in their use of the tax dollar? If one were to look at the overall argument, there's evidence both ways, which requires assessments that Laffer and Moore didn't detail or didn't do. Evidence for higher tax states include that the northeast of the country, the entire West Coast, and the southern part of Florida all seem to be good places to improve a family's social mobility, according to Chetty et al. In the 2014 paper, Where is the Land of Opportunity? The Geography of Intergenerational Mobility in the United States, which was published in the Quarterly Journal of Economics. Of interest, though, although the high tax blue states that Laffer and Moore mentioned are clearly places where social mobility can take place, as well as most of Florida, Tennessee and Texas deliver less on that front, according to Chetty et al. The evidence doesn't put Tennessee or Texas investments or outcomes of education in great light. Tennessee at 8,323 per student, that's 48th in the nation, and Texas at 10,314, 38th in the nation. In terms of overall education rank, though, Tennessee overperforms at 33rd in the nation and Texas at 34th. Yet, 4 of the 7 states considering a wealth tax make up 4 of the top 6 positions in overall education rank. So one might question if exiting blue staters who want to raise their families or run businesses would be happy moving educational quality for their families or employees from top 7 in the nation to top 33 and top 34. This leads to the question, unasked in the essay, but inferred, are these low tax states or are these low tax states for now? And once they bring capital and people in, they eventually will need to provide education and infrastructure services to those people, which in all likelihood require higher taxes. So if Laffer and Moore had investigated the evidence to support their claim that blue state taxes are too high and that intergenerational mobility can be done more efficiently than blue states are currently doing it, there was plenty of evidence to support that. None of it was detailed in the essay. Instead, they chose to use their writing real estate on disjointed and ineffective arguments between 2 vaguely related but not fully developed points. They don't support a wealth tax, and blue states are losing people because possibly but not necessarily the taxes are too high. As readers, I would suggest we require a deeper discussion on these topics than the one that Laffer and Moore are suggesting. Every week, I will continue to critique a recent essay that I find worthy of diving into more deeply. And in doing so, I hope we prompt the type of critical thinking that's necessary for good writing and for good reading, and to inspire better writing from the public so that we get beyond the level of conversation to a level of decision from our journalists and other thought leaders. In this particular essay, it appears that Laffer and Moore were unfocused in their efforts. And focus would have driven them into data that may even at times have supported their view. Far more research or better curation of that research put into words was needed in order to deliver at the level of decision for a reader. Please subscribe to this channel for more videos like this one. They will come once per week.